Hello. I am Tina, Tank's full-time natural language processing bot. In this episode of the Tank Magazine podcast, I will be reading from Uzma Z Rizvi's piece, Deep Futures. In the piece, Rizvi writes on how dreams metabolize the distant past and inform possible futures. She visits the Museum of the Future in Dubai, surveys the ways cities and states create their own dream cartography, and makes the case for how art can unclog our collective imagination. The child in each of us knows paradise. Paradise is home. Home as it was. Or home as it should have been. Octavia Butler, Parable of the Talents. I dream about Gola Gandhis quite often. My childhood was full of these shaved, iced masterpieces, sticky, cold, sweet, not quite natural flavors, oozing down my fingers, my frame squished into the backseat of a Suzuki Marino Swift. My memory fails me. This was before the days of the Suzuki Carry that came into our lives as we grew taller, allowing us to step out or lean over the seats as we quickly devoured our golas along the side streets in Karachi. Even so young, I knew then that these moments were neither lost nor forgotten, that I would return to them. I think of Laura Mvula's voice, lay the breadcrumb down so we can find our way. It was not bread but rather these neon syrup pathways through which I found myself traversing time. Or perhaps it was in the shards of ice that held the syrup together that I recognized the current I had floated on, upstream, to the ancient city of Harappa. Writing history often feels like prophecy. We strive to make the scientific secular, but these ancient cities insist on feeling like sacred spaces, the everyday sacred, the mundane sacred, the banal sacred. I was only 23 when a fakir at a mellah in the village of Harappa looked up and said to me, "Welcome back." To which I replied, "Thank you." As we walked away, a colleague asked me how I knew that religious ascetic, caked in carnelian dust and incense. I shrugged my shoulders. I had just arrived at Harappa to learn how to excavate. I was just starting to learn about time. In Tyree Guyton's public art installation and outdoor art environment at the Heidelberg Project in Detroit, everywhere you turn and look, you see a clock telling you a different time in a different order, in and of, perhaps, a different universe. So much of Guyton's work requires an acceptance of, and handle on, speculative fiction, on universes of universes, on traversals of time, and the recognition of entangled urban and infrastructural violence. Reminiscent of airport displays in which a series of clock faces tells the time of a different place, the places one can imagine multiply, as does the time they represent, into infinity. Overwhelmed by time, its relevance stops existing except as a marker of experience. Guyton's clocks evoke a sense of history like that of an archaeological excavation, one in which the notion of time is something embodied in an artifact. They evoke the uncanny insofar as the artifacts are of the now. Standing within his work, we become history, we become implicated in the system that keeps disenfranchised, racialized communities in neighborhoods of abandoned buildings. Guyton's work is specific to Detroit, indexing the time during which neighborhoods and communities were devastated through systematic urban decay. Although the buildings used in the installation look like they have been abandoned, the broken dolls in their windows and the piles of dirty stuffed animals all defiantly smile in the face of their own disarray, artifacts of the community's resilience. The installation gives the feeling of walking into, and out of, time, gracelessly, stumbling, unsure of one's footing. Walking through the project, on the foundations of houses that have been demolished, one constantly encounters walls, doorways and corners, overgrown with grass, now covered in art. Everything is about everything, and nothing is for sure, yet everything is possible to know. Walking through the neighborhood, we find ourselves somewhere in Guyton's dreams, or in his nightmares. When we met Guyton, he spoke of all the universes and times he had experienced as he imagined, envisioned and realized the project. He told us these were landscapes of dreams, of nowhere in particular, of everywhere, and of future space. But if we aren't you, how would we know that? My friend asked. He looked at me and said, "You know if you know," immediately reminding me of that fakir I had met at Harappa 2 decades earlier. The sense of familiarity gave me pause to smile. Guyton looked at me and said, "Good to see you again," and I smiled again. This time I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Yes, you too." Guyton, as only a shaman can, leaves you wondering if you are experiencing a transcendental shared moment or a performance, or if the stress of life has fractured all reality, exposing the abyss beyond limits of human knowledge. It would be a mistake to think of this project as simply an articulation of one man's envisioned future or dreamscape. This work is important to communities and artists who are committed to socially engaged practices. The project has grown beyond him and has become something different when translated into the language of arts administration and non-profit work. Dreaming informs possible futures, and does not require them to be located or situated in any particular reality. This makes dreams important spaces of resistance, and as such, they can be easily co-opted. Dreams are not formed by consensus. If our futures emerge from dreaming, they may not be immediately accessible, or be linked to any particular reality. In our late capitalist and neoliberal mediascape, all our futures begin to sound, look and feel the same, located somewhere in a dream. If we are not careful, we can mistake these futures for manifestations of our own dreams, or capitalism might condition us all to believe we have the same dreams, and thus, the same futures. In some far-off place many light years in space, I'll build a world of abstract dreams and wait for you. Sun Ra, I'll wait for you. In a different geography and history, capitalism has already taught us how to dream and what futures will look like. The Museum of the Future in Dubai has been set up as an incubator for futuristic innovations and design by its founder, Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the ruler of Dubai. As so often with national projects, envisioning futures is part of the heritage and mythology of the UAE. The Federation continues to promote a particular vision of being that is intertwined with the sand. These sandscapes have historically acted as global ports. It is on these open sands that the cities of tomorrow are built. In the years that preceded the economic crash of 2008, there was an abundant dream cartography in Dubai. Contractors, builders and developers dreamed up entire landscapes, with tables set up at the airport to woo customers into purchasing their dream apartment. Every map of the city was distinct to each company. Large billboards in the locations of developments showed these dream landscapes, behind which the wind blew across acres of sand dunes. Since the crash, the city-state has stepped in, managing dreams, converting them into national discourse. For the vast majority of the population of the UAE, dreams are articulated elsewhere, beyond Dubai. Advertisements on the radio speak of how to wire money from the UAE and buy a house on the outskirts of Kochi, Manila, Islamabad, and Orlando. It is remarkable to think how many dreams of homemaking circulate through transnational labor flows, of bodies in one direction and capital in the other. According to a June 2017 report in Gulf News, the amount of cash that is annually sent out of the UAE in remittances is $70 billion. £14 billion, or enough money to fund the UAE's space industry 3 times over. In September 2017, the UAE announced that it would build the first city on Mars as part of a 100-year project, Mars 2117. Such dreams make me think back to those who envisioned urban landscapes for the first time, and how they thought of themselves, building something beyond what they already knew. The people who dreamed of and envisioned a city in Harappa in 3000 BCE were contending with new infrastructure, new futures and new subjectivities. There was no way of knowing what might happen when urban technologies of living and of life caught up with their dreams. The same is true today. The question of what it might mean to dream of building homes, lives and futures today remains unanswerable, but such questions link our humanity through time and space. Today, as we move between space and time, we are constantly tracked and monitored. Access into cities and the control of populations can be traced back to these first urban landscapes, yet each era has its own particular and perverse forms of control. In October 2017, The National, an Emirati news website, reported that new biometric scanners will be built in Dubai Airport. Travelers will no longer be required to pass through any security counter or e-gate, but will instead walk through a virtual aquarium tunnel that will scan faces and irises through 80 hidden cameras. The fish is a sort of entertainment and something new for the traveler, but, at the end of the day, It attracts the vision of the travelers to different corners in the tunnel for the cameras to capture his/her face print, Major General Obaid al-Hamiri, Deputy Director General of Dubai Residency and Foreign Affairs, told the site. To transform the heady quietness of surveillance and security into a thing of spectacle and wonder is deeply discomforting. And yet, there is something profound about the inversion of gaze. It is we who become the object of the aquarium. It is the fish looking at us in order to extract information, rather than vice versa. And like so many things in the neoliberal post-colony, the neo-colonial apparatus morphs into contemporary forms of control, while simultaneously holding the potential of subversive gesture. It is that potential that provides space for the multiple ways of being human within the infrastructure of cities. It may also be seen in the acknowledgement that the many dreams that exist within the same landscape that articulate themselves differently, like the diversity of expatriate populations in the UAE building homes back in their homeland. It is felt in the multitude of time and realities that different bodies inhabit in Detroit. It is recognizable when one encounters a curved wall or a small misshapen brick within the Harappan world, a world in which the bricks are all made to the same ratio and the walls are all straight. What is it that pulls us at this contemporary moment into the past? It is the future that exercises that gravity. It is the future that we already knew when we were in the past. It is the stickiness of that knowledge, which keeps the question of the future in the present. It is the feeling that everything may actually be everything, and it will always be good to see you again. But today I think, this stone is a stone, it is also animal, it is also God, it is also Buddha. I do not venerate and love it because it could turn into this or that, but rather because it is already and always everything, and it is this very fact, that it is a stone, that it appears to me now and today as a stone. This is why I love it and see worth and purpose in each of its veins and cavities, in the yellow, in the grey, in the hardness, in the sound it makes when I knock at it, in the dryness or wetness of its surface. Hermann Hesse, Siddhartha. To hear more podcasts from Tank, you can subscribe on all major podcast platforms or follow us on SoundCloud. The theme music for this podcast is taken from Waiting Games by Kate Simcoe and the London Electronic Orchestra.